Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. During the sticky heat of an East Tennessee summer, the absolute worst thing that can happen is to be itching from mosquito bites on top of it. Clear those things out of your yard. Southeast Termite and Pest Control offers one-time, monthly, or other scheduled spray treatments for your home, for your yard. Protect your yard and family. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, good locally owned, family-owned business. Friends of mine, get out there and check them out. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, let them kill those skeeters. All right, they remember what you do in November. That's what's always been said. When you were beating Kentucky, Vandy, and either Ole Miss or South Carolina for 30 straight years, yeah, they remember good stuff. And the mood at the end of the year, it was always, well, if only we played Florida and Alabama later, that kind of stuff, you know. They also remember what you do in November when you lose to Missouri and Vandy year after year after year, and that's happening now.
By a lot.
So my question, when we look at this schedule, can Tennessee flip this thing back to the way it used to be? Let's take a look here. They open the month with UAB. So remember, you're coming out of the, South Carolina game. So you're out of that hell month, and you're on to UAB, who will have an open date before facing you. They were 11-3 last year. Now, they're picked to be 86th in the country, according to Athlon. I think that's probably right. They're not going to go 11-3 again. That was kind of an amazing story last year. They're also Conference USA, so that's not a huge trap game. But anyway, at Kentucky is next. 10-3 last year, but they lose Snell, which is a huge loss for them. But they will be in an open date before playing Tennessee as well. Tennessee gets their second open date between Kentucky and Missouri. There are 2 road games there in the month. At Missouri, then Vanderbilt, who has owned you 5 of the last 7, which is just unbelievable. All right, gentlemen, you see where Athlon picks these teams. Again, Kentucky 48th, Vanderbilt 50, Tennessee 47. So this is just Athlon, but that is the most correct of all the predicting magazines. And believe me, my buddy tells me that every time I talk to him. But anyway, you see Missouri ranked 23rd in their list. All right, guys, talk to me about the month of November. You mentioned depth issues. All right, what are we looking at in November? On one hand, if you've been banged up, do you have enough depth to survive November? On the other hand, we talked about all these young guys and new coordinators. There's also the potential for gelling here in the month of November, that you've started to put things together. What are we looking at in your view? What are you seeing?
I think you need to go 3-1. I think, depending on how good Tennessee is, could you go 4-0 in November? I think you could. You could also go 2-2 or maybe even worse, but I think you need to go 3-1, because if you can get 3-1 out of that, you don't do well against Florida in October, it still gets you into a bowl game.
The first thing that comes to mind to me is what's left of them after the very difficult October. And that goes back to the depth issues we were talking about earlier, in health, depth, and then just the physicality of that stretch with difficult teams. I think Missouri, to me, on the road is going to be the toughest of those games. UAB is a sleepy, tough one because they have a very experienced team, even though they lost a bunch of starters. I still think that could be a challenge, especially if they're not focused.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're looking at November, to me, no worse than 2-2. I mean, and because that way you got to get at least one SEC win, don't you think? You got to find a way.
Well, if you're saying they haven't gotten one yet, then yes.
Yes, I mean,
if you're saying 0-4 in October and lost to Florida, then
yeah, I mean, you got to get something turned around during the month of November, and UAB is kind of sleepy good.
See, I'm not taking them as seriously as I'm not there yet. Let's see how they do this year. Last year was a tremendous story.
You don't expect, like Bob was talking about, not picking until you beat them. South Carolina and Missouri the same way now. How can you pick Tennessee to beat Missouri when they've scored 51 points against you each of the past 2 seasons?
And we'll talk about this a little later too, but if they had just lost Drew Lock, which they did, you'd think, okay, we got a shot there. But they bring in Kelly Bryant, who's transferring in from Clemson. Okay, that immediately you're looking, hey, there's a hole there. No, there's not.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
David, your take.
Going on the road in the SEC, you're just that's difficult all the time, every single game. I mean, we were talking before the show. Last year, besides Arkansas, there was not really a team in the SEC that you can play okay against and beat. Like, there's just not something that you can do. And Tennessee, again, like we've said, is a team that's got no margin for error. They've got to play well. If you come out flat, you lose by 3 touchdowns to Missouri. You lose by 3 touchdowns to Vanderbilt, just like we saw last year. So, again, it comes down to how healthy are you? Can you play? I think Tennessee ran out of gas late in the last season. I think, you talk to coaches, they say some similar things. And I think you have a tired team at the end of the year. And can they avoid that this year? We've got a few more bodies, not a lot more.
But you also got the psychological part of it, too. I mean, are you healthy? Yeah, that's big. But say you've gone on a 5-game losing streak. Okay, then do you get to November and
Well,
you've
it's the
shown
Butch Jones
improvement,
year.
you've lost some close games possibly, but does it just finally take a toll on you? Because I think in Butch's last season, I think it took a toll on that team, and at the end they finally just said, we're done,
Yeah,
we
they
quit,
quit.
we can't play. Does that happen if you go on a 5-game losing streak?
And let me throw this out there quickly as well. You mentioned Garantano. What did he get knocked out of last year? 3 games? 4
Yeah.
games? You don't have
Mostly
Keller
4.
Chris this year.
Yeah.
You don't know what you got behind him. So, I mean, it's not like Chris came in and ruled the world, but still, you're going to go to a guy who's never played before if Garantano goes down. That's a huge hit. I know there are people out there saying, well, you should be better this year. Well, in theory, but you've got a lot of young people who are having to take over, and you've got less experience behind Garantano if something does happen to him. So, you mentioned in between segments here that we needed Sterling here. Just to be 12-0 so somebody would be happy out there, because we sound pretty grim here. What are we saying the record needs to be? Let's put it back up there. What does the record need to be coming out of November?
I think the expectation needs to be 3-1 here. That they, in your scenario, John, that they are getting better as the year goes on, and you have to hope that they can overcome any emotional, really tough games prior to that, so they can win. Last year was a lot of up and down.
20 seconds, Chuck.
I'm looking at it. Needs to be 3-1, but I'm looking at 2-2.
2-2. Bob, you
It
said
needs to be 3-1.
needs to be 3-1. David?
I'm with them. Needs to be 3-1, but 2-2 I think is probably more likely.
All right, then you would be looking at a 7-5 season, because we said you need to be 3-1 in September, you need to be 2-2 or 1-3. I'm sorry, you need to be 1-3 in October, and need to be 3-1 here.
No spoilers for late in the show, John.
Well, no, that doesn't mean that's what our record's going to be. That's what you need to be. I don't think that's what you're. Maybe you guys will just think they'll hit all their needs. I, for one, have my doubts. When we come back, we're going to get a little bit more specific the rest of the way. We're going to look shock wins and shock losses. Where are the upsets, the most likely upsets going to be? Come on back.